This is Professor Michael Chapman. I'm one of the most experienced IVF doctors in Australia. I believe that an important part that I can contribute is to educate patients in relation to fertility, infertility, and all that involves. These series of podcasts help to educate you. I hope they are helpful to you. If you wish to know more, however, I'm more than happy to have you contact me via email, which is profmchapman@gmail.com, or make an appointment to see me on 9138 4222. Next stage is obviously the fertilisation in the laboratory. In the majority of cases, that'll be just letting the sperm sample that's been collected that morning lie with the egg, and almost as occurs in the fallopian tube in nature, the sperm and the egg will get together. The sperm and the egg, once they get together, the next morning the scientists can see that's happened by looking down the microscope and seeing what are called two pronuclei, one's from the mum and one's from the dad. That's before the embryo starts to multiply in terms of cells. When we collect 10 eggs, we expect 8 to be fertilised, maybe 7, and in older women it's more like 5 because eggs are not as good quality. We then, in most IVF units, grow the embryos for another 5 days in the laboratory. There are some clinics that still go on day 3, but most clinics have gone through to day 5 because that actually selects out the most likely eggs that are going to produce a pregnancy. On day 3, we don't know how many eggs are going to be good, how embryos are going to be good. And by growing to day 5, we're making sure that these are good embryos if they get that far. Between day 3 and day 5, we lose about 30% of embryos. So they would be wasted cycles of replacement if you put them back on day 3. So on day 5, by day 5, we'll be ready to put the embryo back. But in the meantime, you will have either started using progesterone pessaries, tablets in the vagina to make sure that the hormone levels there are good. There's still debate about what the best progesterone regime is, and there may be women who need subcutaneous progesterone, which has just recently become available in Australia. In the United States, they use intramuscular progesterone, which is both painful and has side effects. So it's never really taken off in Australia. And the evidence that it's better than what we do with tablets and pessaries is actually pretty marginal. You've been using those now for a couple of days, and then we come to the embryo transfer, which is, in fact, just like having a pap smear. So the doctor will insert the speculum, find the cervix, and once he's found the cervix, he'll pass a fine tube through the neck of the womb to guide the other catheter, which has the embryo in it, through into the cavity of the uterus. That's often done with ultrasound to show that it's actually in the right place, and takes the whole thing. That whole thing takes from 5 to 10 minutes. It's not, and you're obviously awake for that. For the egg collection, I didn't say, but some clinics routinely do general anaesthetics. They're very light ones. You're home in the next hour or two after the procedure. Others do it under nitrous oxide or very light sedation, and you're awake during the procedure. Once we put the embryo back, you continue with the progesterone progesterone vaginal tablets or gel up until the day of the pregnancy test. And on that day, you'll come for a blood test, which is 10 days after, usually around about 10 days after the embryo was put back. Blood test will tell us whether you're pregnant or not. Depending on your age and other factors, the average chances of a pregnancy after that 10 days is in the order these days of 35 to 40%, which is a lot better than when I started doing it, when I was saying to patients 10% was a good result. So we've come a long way in terms of the science behind IVF. In younger women in particular, when we get to day 5, we'll find more than one embryo has grown. And what we do is put one back and freeze the remainder. And they're there either for a future pregnancy, or if this cycle didn't work, putting it back in the next normal cycle without all the injection. So basically that's the run through of what IVF involves. There are not many variations on that, but talk to your doctor to ask what things are what But that's the Chapman recipe you've just heard, which is actually not just mine. It's what we do across IVF Australia and most clinics around the place.
Prof, we have a question submitted earlier. Your opinion about human reproduction using in vitro gametogenesis.
Someone's done it in China, I think it is, in mice. It hasn't got to humans yet. It may do, because creating a pregnancy is about getting the genetic material together, the male and the female genetic material, and every cell in the body has that genetic material. Working out how you get the division of the 23 pairs of chromosomes to give you a single 23 set of chromosomes, both from the male and the female, is the issue that needs to be solved. But science moves forward, so it's not impossible by any means. And maybe in 10 years' time, we'll be out of a job. The scientists will be the people that create the pregnancies. We won't have to have injections and we won't have to do egg collections. We'll just have to put the embryo back.
And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website www.theivfjourney.com and select IVF Journey podcast from the navigation menu.